This is the week 18 passage for Fix It 4. We'll go ahead and just jump in at day 1. Remember, the little mermaid was kind of complaining to her grandmother. You mean I can never have an immortal soul like humans do? And this is the response. So we're going to indent because we have a new speaker who is the grandmother. No. So we have quotes around no and then the comma inside the quotation marks. We're interrupting with our attribution here. We're interrupting what the grandmother said. So we have answered the old woman. Then we need another comma on the end of that because we're going to continue the sentence that she spoke. So we'll open quotes, but not capitalize it because it's the same sentence. You cannot gain an immortal soul unless a man loved you so much that he affianced himself to you and the priest joined your hands together. That's the end of that thought. Then both you and he would have a soul. I'll explain why it's he in just a minute. So she's still going to continue speaking. So I did not close the quotes there because grandma hasn't finished talking. So punctuation, we have, you cannot have an immortal soul. No comma there, because when the main clause, you cannot have an immortal soul, precedes an adverbial clause, unless a man loved you so much, you don't have a comma. Also, that clause is always essential. So loved you so much that, we need this information, it's essential, so no comma there. That he affianced himself to you, no comma there, because we're joining two things he did. And the priest, this is part of the that clause, the priest joined your hands together. So, end of thought, period. Then both you and he would have a soul. So subjects and verbs, we have answered, and then who answered? The woman. You cannot gain an immortal soul. Can gain is the verb, and you is the subject. Unless a man loved you so much, loved is our verb, who loved the man did, that he affianced himself to you. Affianced is the verb, and he is the subject. And the prince joined your hands together. Joined is our verb, and priest is the subject. Now there's a subject and verb here, but remember it's part 2 of the that clause. So, and then look at this last one. Our verb is would have a soul. Would have is the verb, who would have, you would have, and he would have. It's the subject of the sentence, so we have to use the subject form of the pronoun. You can kind of hear it if you didn't have you and, you would just say him would have a whole soul. That doesn't make sense, but to say he would have a soul does sound correct. So that's another way to tell. But I look at, if I see that something is a subject, that pronoun needs to be a subject pronoun, like he, she, I, that type of thing. Affianced just means you're pledged by promise of marriage or betrothed to someone or engaged, we would say nowadays, I think. So day 2, she's still speaking and she's giving more information. This is not a new topic yet. Since you have a fish's tail, it's not more than one fish, it's a tail that belongs to a fish. So since you have a fish's tail, that's an adverbial clause. And right after it is this main clause, so we need a comma. Since you have a fish's tail, this it's not cannot never, it's cannot ever. Otherwise it would be a double negative. And then we have our period and our quotation marks go outside of the period. Here's where we indent sorrowfully, not sorrowful, but sorrowfully. We're shifting to a new speaker. To her reaction to what the grandma said, and she's not speaking. Sorrowfully, the little mermaid sighed and looked at her fish's tail. Here, fishes is right. I believe on your document, it said that plural fishes again. So fix that if you need to. Looked at her fish's tail. Now here we have coordinating conjunction and, but what is it joining? It's joining the two things the little mermaid did. She sighed and she looked at her tail. So no commas needed there because we're not joining main clauses. We're just joining verbs. To distract her, that's a transitional opener. The old lady told her about that evening's gala. The gala is part of the evening, so it's an apostrophe S. And then we move on to the next one. We're going to indent again because now we have a change in speaker. The grandma is talking again. She tells her, be content because this evening we shall have a court ball. That's the end of what grandma's saying. So it begins here with be content, no speaking verb, and then it ends here after ball. I took out this comma here because be content is a main clause and because is an adverbial clause. When the main clause comes before the adverbial clause, no comma is needed. So subjects and verbs. Since you have a fish's tail, have is the verb, you is the subject. This can never happen. Can happen is the verb, and this is the subject. The little mermaid sighed and looked. Sighed and looked are the verbs, and mermaid is the subject. The old lady told her, told is the verb, lady is the subject, right here. We're going to indent. Now look, be content. Be is the verb. The subject is understood. You be content. So it's that imperative mood. Because this evening we shall have a court ball. Shall have is the verb, and we are the ones who shall have it. So a gala is just a festive occasion, a special celebration. And then we move on to day 3. We're going to indent because now we've got a passage of time and a new scene. Now we're talking about the actual ball. The ballroom was illuminated by hundreds of colossal shells, which burned with iridescent fire. And through the rooms, a broad stream of mermen and mermaids danced to the music of their own rich, harmonious singing. So we want to break it up into clauses. We have the main clause, the ballroom was illuminated by hundreds of colossal shells. Then we've got this who, which clause. Is it essential or non-essential? It's non-essential. We know which shells they are. They're the ones in the gala. So this is telling us more information about those shells that are hanging in the gala, which burned with iridescent fire. It's not like there were bazillions of shells and they're only talking about the ones that were shiny. They're referring to all the shells in that gala room. Through the rooms, this would be a run-on the way it's written. So we're just gonna, and it's too many thoughts all lumped together. So we're gonna put a period after fire, and we are going to take out the and start with the prepositional opener, through the rooms. Then we have our main clause, a broad stream of mermen and mermaids dance to the music of their own rich, harmonious singing. Rich and harmonious are 2 words. They're not cumulative. They're coordinate. They both separately describe the singing. So we need a comma in between them. So for our subjects and verbs, we have was illuminated. What was illuminated? The ballroom, which burned with iridescent fire. Burned is our verb and which is our subject. A broad stream of mermen and mermaids danced. Danced is our verb and stream is the subject. You might be tempted to have mermen and mermaids, but if you notice, if you remember when we used to mark prepositional phrases, mermen and mermaids are the objects of the preposition of, and they dance to the music of their own rich, harmonious singing. Iridescent, it means that you're varying in colors that are rainbow-like. Final day, still talking about this evening of the gala. So that paragraph would join on to the end of this one, not indented. The little mermaid sang more sweetly because it's describing how she sang, and it's not a time period, it's a comparison. So than the rest. That's the end of the thought. So put a period there, which means we need to capitalize this one. It would be a number 3 opener. OY, fervently. And we're going to take out this comma because it's not describing this whole fact. It's describing how they applauded. So no comma when you're describing how the verb happened. Fervently, the whole crowd applauded her with hand and tails. Tails, the kind animals have, not stories. And then we have this with hand and tails. We don't separate a prepositional phrase with a comma. And then if you look, and for a moment, the little mermaid felt content because she knew she had the loveliest voice of any. We've got a lot of clauses there, and we need to decide where the commas go. This comma here with and is in the wrong place. We have our main clause. The court applauded her with hand and tails, comma. Then we've got coordinating conjunction, a little prepositional phrase, but immediately after that is another main clause. So what it's joining is the two main clauses, which means by itself, it cannot join them. It needs a comma, but it doesn't need a comma after it. So, and for a moment, the little mermaid felt content. There's a main clause followed by an adverbial clause. You don't need this comma between them because she knew that, she knew something, she knew that. It's kind of implied. You don't see the word written out, but that's an essential dependent clause. You have to know what she knew. She knew that she had the loveliest voice of any. So our subjects and verbs are the little mermaid sang is a verb. Mermaid is the one who did it. The whole court applauded her. Applauded is the verb and court is who did it. The little mermaid felt content. Felt is our verb. Mermaid is who is content. Because she knew is the verb. She is the subject. She had the loveliest voice of any. Had is the verb. She is the subject. So there is our day 4. And your vocabulary fervently means that you show great warmth and enthusiasm. So you're excited if you're doing something fervently. Go ahead, pause the video and make any changes you need to make. You can double check this. And then once that is done, unpause it. And then you can double check your vocabulary to make sure you have them all correct. Once you have, make any notes of things you want to ask me during office hours, and then upload your work, and I'll see you in class.